A very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Lord, and my special guest is the Minister in the Ministry of Foreign Trade, the Honourable Sandra Husbands. Minister, thank you for joining.
I'm very happy to be here with you, Lisa.
Thank you for coming. Now, let's start fairly basic. When people think about foreign trade, they simply think about the importation or exportation of goods and services, but it's much more than that. Could you explain that for us?
In the Foreign Trade Division, our role is to help build the environment in which trade will take place, which means we have to do advocacy around regulations or new conditions that may affect the way in which we trade, that may affect the way in which government can support a particular sector, for example. You also have to be able to negotiate agreements with other countries that give access to your enterprises, but you have to make sure that the terms and conditions are conducive to allow the trade to take place. And then you also have to do monitoring. You've got to make sure there's compliance. So, for example, in CARICOM, we may have a product that we say there is sufficient regional production in order to satisfy demand. And therefore, any extra-regional product must carry a tariff on it that will help discourage the import and promote the regional trade. But we have to monitor and ensure that that is being complied with so that your domestic enterprises are not being disadvantaged in their own market. So there is a great deal that goes on in relation to foreign trade in creating those opportunities for enterprises, creating opportunities for job expansion, and ensuring at all times the consumer welfare.
If you could just break down for me, how do you actually facilitate trade?
Trade? Well, initially, there are a number of multilateral arena in which we negotiate Barbados' trade interests. So you have, for example, the World Trade Organization, which sets the rules and regulations that are supposed to govern trade and to ensure that there is a fair and open environment that allows people to be able to trade across borders nicely and play fairly. And part of our work there is to make sure that whatever rules they come up with really work for us. So, for example, they're currently discussing investment facilitation. Barbados has made no commitment to not requiring some sort of local content when somebody comes to invest. Other countries have made commitments not to demand local content. It was fortunate that we took that position because then with the new renewable energy program that was launched by the Ministry of Energy under Minister Simmons, we were able to say that with licenses, people who want to invest in renewable energy, people who want to invest in medical cannabis, that there must be some level of local content, there must be some amount of stuff that is available for our local people. But if you don't negotiate those ahead of time, then you could find yourself locked into a position where you can't do that kind of facilitation. So those are the types of things that we do at the WTO level. And then we have a number of economic partnership agreements with the EU, with the UK. And these are supposed to facilitate the opportunity for all of our enterprises, including our cultural industry practitioners. You're looking at your people who want to do things like beauty services, say like hairstyling and braiding. You're talking about people who want to do professional services, whether it's accounting, architecture, engineering, medical. We seek to ensure that they can have access to markets where their goods will be competitive or their services will be competitive. And part of the issue is sometimes you have an agreement, but people really can't take advantage of it. So our job is to monitor that. So part of the work that my team does is every couple of years, we're mandated to review all of those agreements to see if they're working, to see if they're delivering the promise that we made in terms of what it should do in terms of benefit. And then one of the other things we do then is liaise with our partner ministries now, who have the responsibility for various economic activity. So it might be agriculture, it might be industry. And we work with them to see, are the issues that are blocking our enterprises from really taking advantage of it? What are some of the things? Let's help negotiate and dialogue a change, or let us help make some recommendations that could help us to help our enterprises take more advantage. So it's a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff.
You touched briefly on EPA. What's happening with EPA?
The EPA, unfortunately, is not delivering as well for us as we would like. Part of that is because our enterprises are not built to scale. Unless you're operating at a certain size, your unit costs will be a challenge. The second problem you can encounter is that they may have requirements in terms of standards that you're unable to meet. So, for example, with the EU, it would be the sanitary and phytosanitary measures that, as yet, Barbados is still working on the legislation, which we hope will be out shortly. The Ministry of Agriculture is working very hard on that. And despite COVID and despite our financial challenges, we are still focusing on how can we get lab resources that we can test and to be able to meet those requirements. Because without it, we simply cannot take advantage of either of the two EPAs. And it would be necessary also if we want to engage Africa. So that's a priority for our government.
Before I get to Africa, however, I know in recent times Barbados has made stronger linkages, especially with Suriname and Guyana. Has that been paying off?
Yes, it is. And I'll say this. When you have domestic enterprises that have a market of 300,000 people, there is no way to grow your business except you export. And there's no way to build sufficient economic strength that if competition comes into your domestic market, that you can hold your market. What typically happens in Barbados is that many of our businesses hide behind the national walls because through our tariff structures, through our trade agreements, we're able to give them some protection. But what is the challenge? For them to continue to grow and make profit, they have to charge the consumer more and more for the same good. Now, this affects consumer welfare. So as a government, our responsibility is to be able to balance both things. What is best for the enterprise and what is best for the consumer. So the only way that we can achieve those twin objectives is to get enterprises to export, because they have to operate to scale, their unit costs will drop. So instead of raising the price to the domestic consumer, you can offer a better price, but you're making more money because you are increasing the demand for your product at the regional level. Hence the priority of Guyana and Suriname. Hence the priority of looking at, can we export more to the OECS? And therefore, the Cabinet would have mandated the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, as well as the Ministry of Industry, to take a look at Suriname and Guyana in relation to broadening our trade prospects. And with Guyana set to grow at a tremendous rate, well over 30% of GDP. I would love those numbers in Barbados. It means that Barbados must engage that space very, very quickly, that we can be a part of that growth. Suriname similarly has found oil, but her development is lagging a little behind Guyana. They're not as advanced, so it's going to take a little more time. But we have a special envoy who has been doing tremendous work in Suriname and has been taking good advantage of whatever possibilities are there. Now, why Suriname and Guyana are important, and Belize, food production security. When you are 166 square miles, your capacity to grow every single thing that you need for your population, and then for a tourism population, which can top close to 1 million persons a year, you need to be able to ensure that you have good food security. So while domestically, you would see that the Ministry of Agriculture has broadened and accelerated domestic production, at the same time, we are engaged in dialogue with Guyana and Suriname and Belize about making sure that they grow sufficient of the essential foods that we need, that should Barbados be knocked out by a hurricane, or Dominica experience that disaster that they had with Irma and Maria, or what happened in Antigua, that we have a quick alternative. And part of that program is not just producing and keeping food on the ready during the hurricane season. It is also about keeping planting material. When Dominica was hit, every single living thing was stripped and destroyed. And it would take months to recover and get enough produce to grow to feed that population. In the meantime, where is the planting material going to come from, and where's the food going to come from? And that is why they're critical to our capacity to build regional food security. And that's why it is a focus for the Foreign Trade Division.
I'm going to come back to that topic about food production in just a second, but I want to know how our relationships are right now with our older trading partners like the US and the UK, for example.
Those relationships are still maintained, but obviously COVID would have challenged a number of things. You would have had situations where the US, for example, was engaged in a trade war with China, which meant that goods coming to the USA and then transiting to us now would increase in price. So you have dynamics that go on that affect the issue of the trade in terms of what we're able to import. But what we've been able to do quite successfully, and we would like to do more, are exports then into the United States, which we've been able to do via our Sabera program. And we've been able to export about $40 million under that particular program. And then I think it's another $20 million under the wider Caribbean Basin Initiative. Now, one of the things that we need to do to boost trade is to find our diaspora. They're the ones that have long memories about the little house on the Shirley biscuit. They're the ones who know what a good Bajan salt bread means between a piece of, with some cheese in it. And what you want, and this is what the Italians did so well, they introduced pasta and pizza to the United States. Until now, it is a worldwide food. But those were their cultural products that they took with them. And it's the diaspora that will cook it and invite others to take part in it, and then start to build restaurants around it, and then start to build the supermarkets and the products of the supermarkets so that it can then become a universal food. That's where we need to go. That's where I want to see us. But that means engaging our food technologists. That means building your manufacturing capability. That means looking at co-manufacturing production, maybe in the very market where you want to sell so you can save some money. And it means promoting that product. And so these are some of the things that we have on our work plan in relation to making sure that we can tap the diaspora and see how we can get some cassava pone and some Shirley biscuits and things like that into the United States market.
But on that note, you have entrepreneurs who are saying, I have some fantastic products. I would love to export, but I'm not getting the support that I need. What do you say to that?
That is a challenge. One of the things that we are currently looking at, and this is now accelerated in terms of what we want to address because COVID made it impossible to really work on a number of things. And our trade ecosystem needs streamlining. And by that I mean we have a number of operations and institutions that service entrepreneurs. There are a lot. Some of them have overlapping responsibilities. And therefore, the challenge for a small enterprise, they don't have time to walk around and relate to all of them. Because every moment that they're engaged sitting in a meeting, waiting for a response, production isn't happening back at their plant because they might be the chief producer. So looking for more business-friendly ways, and we've started on that journey to ease the how you do business in Barbados.
I was just about to say they're complaining about the red tape.
The red tape is a lot. But a great deal of work has been done. The Ministry of Finance, for example, has done some work with the port and customs to streamline and shorten the length of time it takes to clear goods, to handle documentation, reduce the amount of documentation, use more technology. So we have an electronic single window, which means you can just go and do everything there and not have to go to 4 or 5 places to get it done. We now have to do that, more of that with licensing and registration, even something as simple as vendors. And you would have heard Minister Kerry Simmons talking about the vending program that we are launching and simplifying what vendors need to do, because every hour that they're standing on a line waiting for a license, the children are not being fed. So this is work that has started and will be continued. And what we're doing at BIDC is going to be the linchpin now in helping the enterprises that need to be readied for export to get ready, and then to work in a program that will help them launch into United States market, Canadian market, CARICOM market, Africa, wherever it is, we find opportunities. So that lineup is on the way.
And opportunities. A lot of companies are reportedly not making use of the bilateral relations and trade agreements we have, but they're also saying they did not know that many of them exist.
Working in a school environment lends itself to close contact no matter how careful we try to be. However, in this pandemic, we have implemented public health policies and measures in schools to protect everyone by installing hand sanitization stations, body temperature checks, and properly ventilated classrooms. While we continue to practice proper hygiene, physical distancing, and wearing masks properly by covering nose and mouth, we should still be concerned about the highly transmissible COVID-19 variants like Delta, which spreads rapidly, resulting in severe illness. Vaccines are tested for safety under very strict regulations. Vaccines are safe and they work.
This message has been brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the Pan American Health Organization.
Working in a school environment lends itself to close contact, no matter how careful we try to be. However, in this pandemic, we have implemented public health policies and measures in schools to protect everyone by installing hand sanitization stations, body temperature checks, and properly ventilated classrooms. While we continue to practice proper hygiene, physical distancing, and wearing masks properly by covering nose and mouth, we should still be concerned about the highly transmittable COVID-19 variants like Delta, which spreads rapidly, resulting in severe illness. Vaccines are tested for safety under very strict regulations. Vaccines are safe and they work.
This message has been brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the Pan American Health Organization.
And opportunities. A lot of companies are reportedly not making use of the bilateral relations and trade agreements we have, but they're also saying they did not know that many of them exist.
And we trust to correct that. Many of these bilaterals would have been done maybe 20 or so years ago. And one of the things that we have to do better is that you may have a company that was there for a long time, but their management has changed. You may have new entrants into the market. So every now and again, you need to refresh, coming together and making sure they know about our bilaterals. Now, our bilaterals have been mainly with the Latin American markets. And so far, The benefit has gone to the Latin American companies. They've been doing between 20, 30, 40 million dollars into our markets. Each of them, they're in about that range. Whereas we struggle to do 2 million. Some places you may not hit 1 million because sufficient advantage is not taken of it. Part of the issue that they've identified is that there's a language barrier, there's a transport barrier. My position is if they can export $40 million worth of goods to us on a ship, surely we can put some goods on that same ship and send it back. So do we need to develop an amalgamation program where we coordinate all the people who would want to sell into that market? I may not have enough to get the cost benefit of transporting several containers. But if I consolidate those containers with other people and we set a schedule, surely we can get goods there. The second thing is the issue of language, which is true. And the truth is, as English-speaking people, we tend to be a little bit lazy about learning another language. We think that you should learn our language because it is the language of commerce. So one of the things I would love to see, we have got some bright young people at university, and they've been taking international marketing, international business with languages. And Spanish is one of the languages that a lot of them pursue. We need to create a unit that pulls those young people in and allow them to work on the marketing programs for these small companies that want to penetrate the Latin American market. Two things occur. They build some expertise, they get some experience, they have something to put on their resume, and small companies who don't have the funds are able to get the support to get a toehold in the Latin American market. And that is one of the projects I would dearly love to see developed and move forward so that we can help our enterprises take greater advantage of our bilaterals. And I believe BIDC has some plans to help make that a reality.
In terms of the standard of the products we are producing, how happy are you that they're export ready in most instances?
Many of our products, actually, the quality is not bad. The issue is consistency. The issue is standardization of their process so that they get the consistency. The other issue is they need sufficient working capital, and they need sufficient funding that if someone takes 3 or 6 months to pay them, the company is not going to go belly up. If you have 6 customers and each of them do that to you, you're not going to be able to make it because now you're building a bad name with your bank. You're not paying your workers on time. Your suppliers are not very happy with you. So you keep companies in a precarious position when you don't make sure they have sufficient working capital so that they can export and so that they can keep functioning while they're working. Now, the other thing that is critical to that type of program, everybody does not need to go and get all of the same type of equipment, all 6 different people doing the same thing. One set of equipment work 24 hours every day of the week is going to give you sufficient production capability for your particular product until you reach a stage where you're earning sufficient that you can develop your own production line. And it's that type of production cooperation that we need. And that is not just at the domestic level. We're also going to need that at the regional level. One of the things that grieves me in CARICOM, we have thousands of goods that we import. I don't remember what the tariff universe is, but I think it's close to 9,000 products that are imported into this country. And you have a situation where Barbados has a beer factory, St. Lucia has a beer factory, St. Vincent has a beer factory, Jamaica has Antigua has a beer. Come on. Everybody wants to do flour. Everybody wants to do drinks. Why don't we have production capability so that you can use the investment to build to scale and diversify into other products. Right now, 22% we produce in this region, only 22% of the items that we need. And we're competing with each other among the same products. Another 80, almost 80, was it 78? Another 78% is there for you to diversify into other products so that we make more of the stuff that we consume in this region.
For the sake of the public, and for myself, recently on social media, we saw a bag of sugar, which is produced here, being sold for substantially less on a supermarket shelf in the United States. How is this possible?
Well, I saw it too. And I spoke with my director of foreign trade and I asked her, how is this happening? And one of the things she pointed out to me was that the bag technically is a little bit smaller than what we use here, but it still does not account for the price. So this is something that the Ministry of Commerce would need to look at, because that comes under their remit. Our job would be to alert them to the fact that this is happening. I've had that experience myself in Guyana, where I've seen Barbadian products on the shelf. My eyes are popping out of my head because I know what I pay for these products back in Barbados. So it is something that needs addressing. And the private sector would be the more appropriate body to give an explanation to Barbadians about this. And then we have to see if it needs rectifying. Then we need to look at what we're doing and deal with it.
Let's look now at the whole issue of food production. Now we have a situation where we import certain chicken parts and products, pork parts and products, but the market is saying we are self-sufficient and we are growing at a rate that we can possibly export, but you're not making it possible because you're allowing these products to be imported. I know that that falls somewhat under agriculture, but foreign trade still has a responsibility here.
Yes. In relation to the issue of poultry and pork and imports and so on, you always have a balancing act. Now, with regards to poultry, Barbados is relatively self-sufficient in poultry, eggs, whole chickens, and so on. But Bajans are lovers of chicken wings.
Yes, we are.
And with the best will in the world, the chicken still only produces 2 of those. So you have to import those. So one of the ways in which we control this is by allowing the BADMC to be the controller of how many chicken wings come in. Because let's face it, if you can get 10 pounds or 20 pounds of chicken wings, you may buy less whole chicken. So you have to keep balancing that Barbadians can get access to a delicacy that's important to them, but at the same time, it cannot be so much that it impacts or hampers the production of your domestic chicken. Now, chicken suffers from the problem of scale. Unless we start to export in the region and get ready to export to Ghana, Ghana wants, I think it's 150,000 metric tons or something of chicken a year. I speak under correction. And they import it currently from the United States and Brazil. But they're not going to buy that at $30 a chicken. So we have to look at how can we broaden our capacity by selling into the region, because it's not only the 15 million people who live in this region that we can sell to, but the tourists and the tourism establishments. How do we get them to consume this chicken so that we're able to build sufficient scale that we can compete? Now, so far, we have not seen the necessary push to do the regional export. Regional exports can occur. One of the blockages with chicken and meat, however, are the sanitary and phytosanitary regulations. And this is why Prime Minister has prioritized this with the Minister of Agriculture, that look, we are not going to be able to export something that we do really, really well, which is chicken and pork. And therefore, we need to solve that problem. So that's on the way. But what that means is that if you are looking to export, you now have to look at your business model and say, okay, what volume levels do I need to reach in order to bring this price down that I can be competitive in regional and then extra-regional markets? Now, with pork, we're not self-sufficient.
Not as yet.
But Barbadians love their pork, and they will not give up sows. It does not matter what you say to them about the health risks. I happen to love mine as well. And the expansion of that particular market is going to be important. But again, you need to be able to present the cuts in the way that it meets the requirements for your hotels, your restaurants domestically, as well as regionally, if you're going to make that thrust in terms of your pork production. So that is one of the things that we need to look at. Right now, we have one of our biggest challenges, which is the increase of the feed prices. And this is going to affect Barbadian tables. And it's going to affect the viability of the small producers. Some of them may follow the market because their costs in relation to the price of water, the price of the feed, etc. And then if you have narrow markets, it's going to be difficult. So one of the things, the Ministry of Agriculture has put a short-term measure in place. Right now, Foreign Trade is working on a medium-term measure. And so we've started discussions with our colleagues in Belize, in Guyana, in Trinidad, and so on, those who grow the corn and soya, which make up the animal feed. And some of them have started increasing production, but that will take time to get the volume numbers up and hopefully be able to drop the price. Now, once that can happen, then it means that the COTED now, which is one of the organs of CARICOM, which we represent Barbados at the COTED meetings, will be able to look at, do we need to make adjustments to the CET to keep the corn and soya attractive to our feed producers so that we can keep and control the cost of soya. So shortly, a document will go to Cabinet to consider some options as to how we think it can go. But I think that this particular issue of food production security presents a wonderful opportunity for us to shift from extra-regional imports and connect with our regional imports and make those necessary substitutions so that we can expand jobs in our manufacturing sector, we can earn more in terms of foreign exchange, and at the same time create the security in terms of access to food for our CARICOM residents.
You mentioned Ghana. What opportunities exist in the continent of Africa for Barbados?
Let me begin preparations. It's hurricane season. Let me sit down and reason. Let me secure a nation. Know your shelters, Bajan. Help out one another, get situation. Develop emergency community plans so that we could function. Remove outdoor objects. Make sure now you went to the ATM. Stock up with water. Make sure you clean the guttering, Lord. What about canned food? Make sure you got some stock up in your room. Make sure you prop up the paling and tie down the roof. Let me start to prepare real soon. Let me begin preparations. It's hurricane season. Let me sit down and reason. Let me secure a nation. Know your shelters, Bajan. Help out one another, get situation. Develop emergency community plans so that we could function.
Vaccines have both protected and kept children healthy from serious illnesses such as whooping cough, measles, crippling diseases like polio, and others. Vaccines help your immune system to do its job better and faster, and that protects you from serious disease. Like a good security guard, the immune system is always on patrol in your body, looking for invading germs. When it comes across a germ, it begins releasing antibodies to fight that germ. These antibodies work to attack, weaken, and destroy the germ. The COVID-19 vaccine is no different. It will work to help your immune system fight COVID effectively. All vaccines go through strict trials before they are approved for use in the population. Even after the COVID-19 vaccines are approved for use in the general population, monitoring for safety continues. Vaccines are safe and they work.
This message has been brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the Pan American Health Organization.
You mentioned Ghana. What opportunities exist in the continent of Africa for Barbados?
So many. BIDC would have commissioned a consultant to do some research for us in Ghana. And what are some of the areas that we can look at? And in terms of agro-production, there are a number of areas that we can engage there. Besides the chicken that we talked about, you have our juices or snacks and so on that we can literally make good money on. And we, as you know, Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade just opened a mission in Ghana, and this is to help facilitate the trade. And we have a commercial attaché who's doing a wonderful job, Mr. Phillips, and we are looking forward. They're interested in everything from our ice cream back to whatever. We're also interested in Kenya, and we want to see what are some of the opportunities that might be presented in Kenya for us to do trade. So we are really looking forward to those possibilities. But one of the areas that I am very keen on would be the area of services, because we have a distinct advantage. We have highly trained persons, we have a broad range of skills, and Barbadians tend to be unconsciously brilliant about what they do. And they're able to take anything and adjust it to meet local conditions so that it works well. And that is what gave rise to what was known as the Barbados model. So that international agencies, anytime they wanted to pilot a particular initiative, they would include Barbados, because Barbados will adjust and tweak until it works for our environment. And then they use the Barbados model now to export to other countries, because now it's well adjusted for developing countries. And our service providers are very good at that.
I know that you're foreign trade. However, I find the complaint amongst producers is that they're basically pricing themselves out of the export market because our production costs are simply too high.
They are.
Is there anything that can be done to facilitate them in terms of, I know that we are an expensive nation at the end of the day, but they do need the assistance if they're going to get to the export market.
And this is why we can't manufacture any and everything. It cannot be low cost. It has to be a niche item where we've done some innovation around it. It has a special Caribbean character or a special Barbadian character, and we do it very, very well. The thing is, what the enterprises need will be access to financing to build the scale, and to have entities that are willing to take the risk to provide you with that capital to be able to make that big step forward. Right now, generally, it is government who is willing to take that risk. You find that some of our finance institutions are not as eager to provide financing at that level because it's an unknown quantity. We don't know how well you will do, and so on and so forth. And that is a challenge that we experience. But it's something that we have every intention of finding ways to overcome.
And COVID has shown the need for us to diversify. We know we can no longer rely on tourism the way that we used to.
Correct.
What is your ministry doing?
Excellent. What we've tried to do is internally first, we've been doing sessions with our teams to help them to understand the economic implications of COVID. Because when you knock out tourism, which is the main driver of your economy, all of your other businesses depend on tourism workers to shop and buy. They depend on the tourism entities to buy goods and services. So once you knock that out, it is going to create a hole that will, if you don't fill it quickly, will gradually create a slow fall in your economy. So time is of the essence. The second thing that we have been doing is we have been looking at how can we fast track the promotion of our goods and services in a way that is cost effective. Now, with our challenges, with the best will in the world, you're not going to be able to put a number of sales and marketing people in every market. And what we've done at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, we are working on the development of a commercial diplomacy network. This means taking all of our missions, wherever they are in the world, and training them in how to do effective sales and promotion around the goods and services which Barbados offers. Ensure that they have all the information that they need to be able to promote those goods and services. And then we've set up a connection with BIDC, which is currently being worked on, that as they identify opportunities, we pass it straight to BIDC, and their officers know, who are the professionals, know. And taking that opportunity and converting it into active business for Barbados, they take it all the way. And this is what we're currently setting up, currently doing the training around, the planning around. And we feel that by doing this, we will give our export a start. Now, you may then have a market that really jumps up and does really well. Well, then you can afford to put a commercial attaché in there. You can afford to beef up your BIDC presence in that market because you know it's going to give you the returns, because you can't be scattershotting and hoping for the best. You have to be targeted and take calculated risks that will bring the returns that we need. So that's what we're currently working very hard on, and I want to thank my team for supporting on this.
Which leads me to my next question. So I'm an entrepreneur. I have a fantastic product. I've now been able to start exporting. I'm investing, I'm growing, but what protection mechanisms exist for me?
Well, one of the things that we do in foreign trade, our job is to be able to advise government. Look, we have this fledgling industry. It needs a chance to grow. We have some competition in the domestic market. Here's our recommendation in terms of tariffs. Here are our recommendations in terms of the trade law that supports your ability to protect a particular industry. And so what we do is give government that advice and how to implement those options. Now, sometimes those options have to be okayed, maybe by COTED because of the other arrangement we have. So foreign trade goes to the COTED meetings and makes the representation to get permission to put the protection in place or whatever is the case. And then sometimes it may require WTO notification because it has to be compliant with their rules. So you have to put the case and make sure you argue the trade law in such a way that they can see, okay, yes, this can be permitted, this can be allowed. So that is what we do.
Our biggest export over the years continues to be rum. How pleased are you with our rum exports?
Very. One of the things I want to see is for us to be able to penetrate the Chinese market with a high quality rum. We're the home of rum.
Yes, we are.
We're the home of rum. And our rum story and our rum brand needs to be protected and needs to be advanced. And China would be one of the markets we would want to look at. Africa would be another market we would want to look at to be able to get rum into those homes and for consumption. The issue that we have with rum, however, is getting the molasses to make the rum. And in order for the rules of origin to be met, to say it is a Barbados rum, you have to be careful with the ingredients that you put in and where you bring them from and how much transformation you create with them to be able to still claim this is a Barbados rum. So those are the things that currently occupy the market in relation to rum, but it's doing well.
I'm an entrepreneur at home watching this program, and I think I am ready to export. How do I go about it in terms of approaching the various agencies before I come to you?
Great. Well, generally, the agencies that will take care of that entrepreneur, it will start with your BIDC. They have business development officers who will work with you and help you also navigate the rest of the network. You might need to go to Enterprise Growth Fund for funding. You might need technical assistance in terms of training, so they'll seek to organize that for you. You have the Caribbean Export Development Agency. They will try to tap you into the We Export or whatever program they have. IDB might have a competitiveness program that they're launching. So there are lots of things to navigate, and you need a partner to help you because it can be overwhelming, especially for a small enterprise. That's why I said earlier, we have to simplify, streamline, and make it much easier for people to navigate, because after a while it's exhausting and you say, you know what, this is too hard. So your first stop is BIDC. You also have fund access. You also have the trust loans, your Ministry of Commerce and Small Business Development. You have your BSOs, your business support organizations. So you're talking about the Small Business Association, you're talking about the Entrepreneurship Forum, that group, or you're talking about the Chambers of Commerce or Barbados Manufacturing Association. All of those are there, but your first stop, especially if you're a new entrepreneur, I would encourage you, BIDC, sit with them and let them guide you through the process step by step and get you into an export readiness program. And then you'll be ready to fly.
And Minister Husbands, thank you for sitting with us. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And that was the Minister in the Ministry of Foreign Trade, the Honorable Sandra Husbands. And that's it for One on One. I'm Lisa Lord. Thank you so much for joining. Good evening.